Now, if you look at the brain from on the front, you'll be able to see the right cerebral hemisphere and the left cerebral hemisphere. So here's the brain looking at it from the front. And this bottom part would be the brain stem, continuous with the spinal cord. And because we're looking at it from the front and the cerebellum is at the back, we would now see the cerebellum at the back behind the brain stem on the front. So that's the brain looking at it from the front. And we see now that the two cerebral hemispheres are joined in the lower part of the brain. So in the top part they're separate, lower down they're actually joined together. So if we're looking at it from the front, can you see that's the right side of my brain there, isn't it? And that's the left side of my brain there. Now let's imagine that this is a section here of the brain at the level of the motor cortex there. So we've got a big machete and chopped someone's brain like that and looked at it from the front. It's called a coronal section. We've taken a coronal section. Now that means that this area around about here, who's buzzing? Turn it off. Who's buzzing? Someone's buzzing. Mine. Right, that means this area here is motor cortex. Motor cortex. And the cortex is the outer part of an organ. So this is the cortex round about the outside. And what we have here is the motor cortex. Because we've taken a section of this brain at the level of the motor cortex.
So it's not all the way through?
No, it's just on the outside. In fact, it's a remarkably thin layer on the outside. The motor cortex.
And this is the brain looking at it from the front?
Yep. It's what you call a coronal section. So we've taken a big machete and we've chopped someone's brain long way like that. We normally only do this to people we don't like. Now, nerve fibres come from the right motor cortex here, and they kind of come together down here. So these come from motor neurons up here. Now, these are the motor neurons that generate new nerve impulses when it's time to move something. So they'll generate new nerve impulses. These nerve impulses will go down through the brain. And they're all tied away in a nice, neat capsule in here like this. It's called the internal capsule, but don't worry about that just now. And then that goes down in a big bundle of nerve fibres. It doesn't actually, the bundle of nerve fibres doesn't actually go through the brainstem, it goes down on top of the brainstem. And the same happens on this side. Goes down through the brain and then down the front. Big bundle of motor nerves goes down the front of the brain stem. And again, these are coming from motor neuron cell bodies, the clever part of the nerve cell. And then something really strange and mysterious happens. All this bundle of motor nerve fibres from the right side decides it doesn't like it there and it goes over to the left. So all that whole bundle at the bottom, at the level of the medulla oblongata, goes over to the left hand side. Fortunately, at the same time, the bundle from the left-hand side decided it doesn't like the left-hand side, and that crosses over to the right-hand side.
Do you know why it does that?
No idea. No one knows. I certainly don't. No one I've ever talked to has asked. No one I've ever asked has really known. But this is what happens, and then that means that the bundle from the left side goes down the right-hand side of the spinal cord, and the bundle from the right side, which is now on the left side, goes down the left-hand side of the spinal cord.
Whereabouts does it cross over?
It crosses over there
Yeah.
at the level of the medulla. Who said that? It crosses over at the level of the medulla oblongata,
Yeah.
the bottom of the brainstem. Crosses over. It's called decussation. It crosses over to the other side. And of course, the spinal nerves to the left-hand side of the body leave from the left side of the spinal cord. And the spinal nerves going to the right side of the body leave from the right-hand side of the spinal cord.
How do you spell that? Just...
I shouldn't have said that really. Just call it crossing over for now. The crossover. So all the fibres from the right have crossed over to the left, and all the fibres from the left have crossed over to the right. So the right-hand side of the body is controlled, that's the left-hand side of the body there, is controlled by the right motor cortex. And the left motor cortex is controlling the right hand side of the body because it crosses over. And of course, as we know, all of the brain is surrounded by the cranial bones, isn't it? So there's the foramen magnum. And again, all these are going all the way around. So again, this is the cranial bones of the skull. And this is the cranial cavity containing the brain, just looking at it from the front. Now suppose someone's got bashed on the left-hand side of their head. Can you see they might be developing a space-occupying lesion here? Could be a hematoma, for example. Or it could be developing cerebral contusion. So they've got a space-occupying lesion on the left side. Can you see that's going to increase intracranial pressure all over? But first it's going to press on the left side of the brain, isn't it? So it's pressing on the left side of the brain. And what cortex is this that it's pressing on? Motor cortex. So can you see this means that if there's a space-occupying lesion in the left, it's going to compress the left motor cortex first. We know that the left motor cortex controls the right-hand side of the body. So can you see that might mean that this isn't working properly? If this isn't working properly, that might mean that the right side of the body is not working properly. And what you notice first is weakness. One side of the body becomes weaker. So if we are testing the strength of the right arm, the right wrist, the right elbow, the right hip, the right knee, the right ankle, if we're testing the strength of the right side of the body, and that is reduced compared to the left side of the body, can you see that means that it could be that the left cerebral motor cortex is being compressed and not working properly. So a right-sided weakness could indicate a left-sided space-occupying lesion with raised intracranial pressure. And of course the same the other way around. If there was a space-occupying lesion compressing the right motor cortex, this could result in left-sided weakness. There would be a difference between the two sides. So can you see if we test one arm and then test the other arm, we can compare the strength, and then if one becomes weaker, that may indicate that there is a space-occupying lesion on the opposite side of the brain. And if the features are on one side or the other, we would call that lateralizing signs. Lateralizing signs means that they're on one side worse than the other. And again, if this was getting bigger, if this was growing, could you see that the right side of the body might be getting progressively weaker? Or you might have started off with a weak arm, but then you develop a weak leg as well. So again, by looking at the body, we're making inferences as to what's going on inside the cranial cavity. Our observations are telling us what may be going on inside the cranial cavity. So a reduction in Glasgow Coma Scale can indicate a generally raised intracranial pressure, and lateralizing signs can indicate a raised intracranial pressure